Hello and welcome to the first live Electric Communion podcast, which was recorded at the Looking Glass Cocktail Bar in Shoreditch, London on the 12th of April 2025 as part of the In Limbo event, which featured the DJs Redfreya, Motip White, Meltam Yazar and myself. The first minute or so of the recording, unfortunately, didn't record. Technical issue with my microphone lead, apparently. So just to fill you in, I introduced the night, as I've just done now, to the small audience that came along to support us. And I just was about to introduce my guests, Redfreya. And I asked her about her recent DJ gig in Japan, and that's where the podcast starts off. Enjoy.
I was just in Japan to play Snow Machine Festival, so that was really fun. Japan's great, guys.
And did the people who ran it, they give you like your own kind of suit to DJ?
No, I totally arranged that myself.
Okay.
I just contacted a ski suit place and I was like, guys, I'm going to be DJing. Do you want to like give me a ski suit? I'll tag you. And they were like, sure.
Right, okay.
So I'm always hustling.
And then you didn't get the first minute because it was okay. And then we have Reg, Ethan. Reg is a fantastic producer. You were actually my second guest on my podcast, weren't you? All those years ago.
That's right.
And you hail from Gibraltar.
I am, yes.
And you've kind of been off the radar a little bit recently, haven't you? You're just taking some time out from kind of social media and stuff.
Yeah, just taking time to myself to, focus on the studio and do my thing.
Yeah, but you popped up the other week and you played at Fold.
I did.
Lauren Garnier.
Yeah.
How was that?
That was amazing. Had the whole room full for the peak time in the second room, which was really great. And yeah, just felt nice to play again and like just do my thing and everyone really enjoy it. So it was fun.
Cool.
It was good, yeah.
And then we have Patrick, better known as the artist Motip White.
Hello.
Who hails from Cologne. And for those who don't know, the reason why we are here in the Looking Glass cocktail bar is because in December we did our podcast here, and we obviously connected with the manager Alfie in here. Yeah, we did, over there. And yeah, we connected with Alfie, and I guess the rest is history.
I think we have also been to an exhibition before, right?
We did. We went to a fantastic exhibition. You are kind of the brains behind In Limbo. Just tell us a little bit about it and kind of the rationale and what you got planned.
So this is, we're here actually in the birth of the In Limbo thing, whatever thing that is, meaning like kind of a collective / label / exhibition thing, because like the idea is to bring exhibitions of art together with music and dancing and so on, and that's like just the kickoff, and with other interdisciplinary things like a podcast, what we're doing now. And that's, I'm not the only one. I'm like together with Redfreya, and that's like we are like a hybrid of Cologne, where I come from, in Germany, kind of the Bristol of the UK, maybe I heard it, so we are kind of like a hybrid between Cologne and London, and we have also very very nice people in Cologne, good DJs, young crowd, and we are also starting our first event there in 3 weeks, and yeah, that's the thing. And last but not least, we have Channan Hanif, who also was one of my guests on my podcast. I think it was episode 8, I can't remember, but this time last year, really.
Yeah, pretty much this time last year.
When I interviewed you then, you were just about to release your first track, and since then you've kind of really exploded onto the scene. You've had tracks out on Reculture, some other histories, you've done some collabs with your friend Works of Intent. How's it been going?
Very good, Rick. Thanks for having me on last year, and thanks for having me on now. It's been good. Thank you.
And you've just been in Pakistan, haven't you, for about 7 months?
Yeah. I've been a bit MIA from London, but I'm back now, and let's make music and let's play music. You know.
Absolutely. Right. Well, let's get on to the discussion, and I want to talk about music because I guess that's
Same.
why we're here, and not just electronic music. I mean, I'm really interested to kind of talk to you about, you know, the influence and the impact that music has had on all your lives, and, you know, maybe kind of got you to where you are now. You're all music producers.
Apparently.
I mean, tell me about, you know, how, like I say, it's impacted your life. I mean, for me, music has always been this constant factor from, I don't know, when I first got into music, from when I was about 8. You know, it's influenced every aspect of my life. You know, I cannot do without music. It's influenced me in regards to the friends I have, you know, the clothes I wear, politics to some extent, you know, all those things. What about yourself? I mean, I'm interested also kind of how you first got into music. You know, for me, it was my parents. My parents weren't really into music as such, but they still got me into music. What about yourselves? Who shall we start with? Freya?
Well, we were actually speaking about this yesterday because I had a drink with Patrick and another Vincent, a friend of his, and we were talking about the music that we listened to when we were growing up. And my mom was always playing a lot of world music in our house. And I'm trying to remember who we were talking about, like Manu Chao and like the Buena Vista Social Club and these type of like interesting, you know, it's just really vibrant sounds. So I grew up like listening to all this music, and you know, obviously we all work now in the music industry, electronic music industry. But you know, I think like music is something that just gives life such definition. Just art in general, actually, you know, not just music, but also visual arts and just creativity. You know, it's like gives your life so much purpose. It just gives so much color to every day. So yeah, I guess that's kind of a big part of how I ended up working in this space professionally, because I just ended up, you know, passion just brings you towards something. Yeah, what about you?
What about me? I guess one of my earliest memories is like my dad driving me to my granny's house, but Eminem playing in the car, and I don't know why, I just remember that so vividly. And I feel like every memory there's like some music related thing, and I thank my parents a lot because a lot of the music that I grew up with like, I don't know, I guess in a way influenced me or like got me into it or like made me interested. A lot of like rock and metal and things like this, like rap, like things that are kind of unrelated to us, but things I hold close to my heart, you know? And I guess that's what got me into everything. Like I can't live a day without thinking about or leaving the house without having music on. Like it would be strange to not have like a soundtrack to my life, you know?
Yeah. And for those who don't know, Reg, you grew up in Gibraltar, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So was the kind of a Spanish influence as well there, or?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, it's very British. So you know, we got like the top 40, but you also get the top 40 from Spain. So there's like you get a mix of everything really, which is interesting. I think it adds layers to what you listen to day, you know. So yeah.
Patrick?
Yeah, for me as well, it's very important. I remember, of course, like driving with my parents to the holidays in Italy, a classic German scenario. And more important is that probably it always grabbed my attention, and I felt there's something very strong touching me somewhere, and I couldn't really like find out what it is, and it was probably the music. And so I have maybe like 5 to 10 moments where I remember that I was listening to something and it just like made me actually like I fell from the chair now, because I don't know what's going on now, but there is something very, very deeply going on. And I still remember those moments and those bands. It was more over like rock and roll bands, to be honest. But I also definitely had this in electronic music, and yeah, of course. So that's like nostalgia, everything. Yeah, of course, it's very important.
Channan?
The question is first experience of music and like.
Yeah, how did you get into music? What are your first memories?
I will differ in the way that my parents weren't that much into music like that. Like I don't think I got anything from them, but from my primary school, I had very first experience was also a little bit of an Eminem thing. I think Eminem was very big at the time. This is like 2000 at some point, and just hearing especially lyrics that you would think that you're not supposed to say that. Hearing that kind of stuff was very intriguing as a young child. But besides that, I got into music, like loving music and feeling the same way that you guys say you do about music. It happened quite late. And it happened through kind of hip-hop and pop rap and like, it was like a beat-based thing, I think, you know? About trap production and like Future and a lot of the Drake music that was coming out. I just felt like the production was so immersive somehow, and that's what kind of got me into. I didn't know that sound could make me feel this way, you know. Which I think you guys are talking about as well. Is like this kind of in the body feeling, you know, and that happened through trap music, pretty much. Yeah.
And just like Reg grew up in Gibraltar, you spent a lot of your teenage years, didn't you, in Pakistan?
Yes, sir.
And obviously your teenage years are often those years where you really kind of start to, you know, find your way in music. And
sorry to interrupt, but like fun stat is like there's some, I don't know, I read somewhere like that 80% of people, I don't know, the music they loved when they were 18 just sticks with them the whole way through, you know? So it's like that is the formative time where you discover that stuff, basically. And yeah, man, for me, in that zone, so I never had older siblings and my parents weren't that into music. But then I got friends in Karachi in Pakistan where they had older siblings, and so then I inherited all this stuff, you know, whatever it was at the time, and that was like, wow, okay, now I just entered the music family, almost late, but like, you know, on time still.
Can you guys remember what the first record or CD or cassette, I don't think you're as old as me, but that you ever bought, like yourself, was? Channan?
Yeah, so just because it's on me and I don't have a good answer for it. I've never bought one. Still. Yeah. Shame. But my parents had this CD, which was the soundtrack of this movie called Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? You know the one?
Coen Brothers.
Yeah. Coen Brothers. Amazing.
Amazing movie.
Love the movie. Love them as directors. And yeah, it had they had the soundtrack for that. And that was one physical thing I remember, you know?
I think for me it was like Red Hot Chili Pepper stuff, Stadium Arcadium, something like this,
Nice.
Arctic Monkeys, and then like went on to Caribou, Andorra, which is still like one of my favorite albums. I also bought a Michael Jackson album, and yeah, the one with "Wannabe Started Something."
Thriller.
It's a Thriller, okay, yeah. And then I remember, as a side fact as well, that like my brother was like on the table a Members of Mayday, that's like a classic German like radio techno anthem, 2003. I really was really into this. I remember. I just stole it from him, I think.
Yeah. My parents bought me a CD player when I was a kid, with a Busted album. So that was the first piece of music I
remember
ever
them.
owned, and I didn't stop playing that like days on days on days.
They were
on
like
days.
a three-piece kind of boy band, was it? Or
Like kind of like McFly, but like I remember it was like McFly and Busted, and then actually they ended up like making a new one together. But yeah, Busted was my first purchase. So
Yeah, for me, the first album CD that I bought was Black Eyed Peas. I think it was Where Is the Love, but I'm not sure how old this song was. I don't know how old I was. Yeah, right. And I had it on CD, and I went to HMV, and I think they've gone bust now actually. But it was I used to go there. I used to buy CDs there, and I'd play them in the car, and it was great. I used to listen to a lot of Black Eyed Peas.
Well, I'd like to say something really cool like Patrick about what his first music. But I think the first record I ever bought was the Kylie Minogue record.
That's cool.
Kylie's
cool.
No, but because I was thinking about this, and we often kind of maybe laugh and feel a bit embarrassed about the first kind of music that we got into. But for me, I was thinking about it. It gave me the pleasure and the kind of feelings of elation that I still get now. Right. So.
Do you know which track?
Can't get you out of my head.
I do. I think I've still got it somewhere. I've got to be so certain. Because what I remember is I wasn't really into the I Should Be So Lucky track, if you know that one, yeah. Because obviously they were big at the time, Jason Donovan and Kylie Minogue and Neighbours and stuff. But a real memory that I have is listening to the album, I don't know what it's called, Kylie's first album, on cassette, on my Walkman, but I was like, when I went to bed, I was sneakily listening to it when my mum and dad thought I went to bed, and I remember just absolutely loving it. And that's kind of what I wanted to get to, the feeling that music evokes, Is there a particular track, or maybe artist or album that really kind of resonates with you, and when you hear it, it kind of maybe takes you back to a particular time of your life? Because, that's what music is, so powerful, isn't it? It really takes you back to certain times of your life, whether good times or bad times. Channan, you look like you're chomping the bits.
Yeah, I want to say something, but I guess, again, after this, I won't preface anything with, it's not cool or whatever. But yeah, when you said that, the thing that came to mind was, to be honest, Coldplay, A Sky Full of Stars. We know the track, it's the one with the late and great Avicii, for example. So the thing is that, I don't know, man, I've always, and to this day, I still love a pop hook, and I love the cheesiest pop hook, I just do. And that, I don't know, it matched up the big room euphoria of whatever Avicii was doing at the time. And A Sky Full of Stars combined with that, the album art they had with the angel wings, the mechanical angel wings or something. But I still, if, I think I see you. It does it for me. It does, and it scratches a similar itch that a lot of things that I like now that might be a bit more niche or complicated, but it gets to the core feeling, so that's my one.
Coldplay are a band that I think get a lot of bad rep. They've kind of become uncool, but they make bloody good music. They make very catchy pop tunes, and hence why they have been so successful.
Yes, there's no Coldplay without Radiohead. I'll say, they're trying to, they got to where they were trying to be Radiohead, but that's a lot of us. Is trying to be someone else, and we get to wherever we are, But yeah, agreed. But the music they're making nowadays, trash. There's no defense.
I remember the first Coldplay Yellow EP or something.
Yeah,
that's
Yellow.
an amazing... right, yeah, it's a black album with some orange on it. I don't know. Yeah. What was the question?
We're talking about a track or an artist or an album that evokes particular kind of memories, maybe a time in your life.
Yes, I definitely have this with several music. I remember listening to, also Michael Jackson and stuff when I was very young. But then later, let's say when I was 17, so on, I listened a lot to Caribou, and I when I hear it, I'm immediately back in the car when I was there and just listening and getting all my attention in this flooding instruments and melodies where you don't understand where anything is, and I have this with a lot of stuff, of course. Yeah, sorry.
It's hard to pinpoint one. I think every stage of my life there's a few. Maybe as a kid, Maroon 5 Songs About Jane. That is a great, great, great album, a 10 out of 10 album. I think a bit older, The Strokes, in my teenage years, you know?
Yes, that was a good album. Their first album.
Yeah, the first album is great. All of them are great. Even the last one is my favorite, but the first one is the one that stuck to me the most. And a song that always makes me cry, like without fail, is Frank Sinatra, My Way, 100%. Yeah, I guess those are just a few that, you know, stay in my mind and always stay in my heart. Yeah.
For me, a track that stands out through my whole life. So my mom always used to play a lot of Massive Attack when I was younger. And they're a classic, right? Like, yeah, she's great. The credit to my mom. But obviously their track Teardrop, it's like a classic, right? Who cannot like this track? But also even like the music video to the track as well. It's just and the lyrics, like the way the lyrics talk about like love and everything. That track has always like inspired me a lot. And I love Massive Attack in general. And like some of their other tracks, Paradise Circus as well. And I don't know if anyone knows the band Snow Patrol, but I used to. So they were like my favorite band as a teenager. Irish band, I think. Yeah, I absolutely love them. So I feel like you can hear a little bit of that vibe in the music that I play and make now. It's very emotional, a bit moody. So yeah.
They were kind of a similar kind of genre to Coldplay, right?
Yeah, I mean they had a really big track. I think it was Chasing Cars. I think that's their big hit. But like all of their music is really beautiful and interesting. So, yeah.
Think about like memories and that, and one of the reasons I kind of thought about talking about this subject. I heard a track recently, a few weeks ago. Is a Sasha track from his, I think it's like 2003 album, Drawn Dagger. Are you familiar with that? That album, that track just kind of took me back to when I was backpacking around the world and I lived in Australia. And that album came out at the time, and it just literally took me back to this house that I was living in, sharing this room with this guy called Soren from Denmark. And just, you know, whenever I hear that Sasha album or tracks from that album, it just takes me back to, you know, that time. And I think that is the beauty of music. I'm interested, like, when did you then get into electronic music then? You know, was it a particular artist or was it a clubbing experience? Shall we start with you, Ethan?
Yeah. Around the age of 16, like when dubstep was kind of a thing, like, yeah, I guess that is kind of electronic, or was. Is dubstep still a thing? It is, yeah.
Was it everything?
Up for debate.
It depends if you mean bro step or dubstep. Bro step is like the US take on the whole thing, you know? The dubstep is like the... Dubstep, I think, is like a very, I don't know, has roots in the UK and that, you know, before it became Skrillex's thing. But what are you talking about?
When Skrillex like first started making music. So that was like first like electronic music sort of vibe. That drum and bass when I was 16, just from my friends in school, you know, and then a bit older like electro and deep house. People would just like show me music and I'd be like, oh, like I guess this is what everyone likes. Until like I just got a bit more invested and I was like, oh, this is what I like, and like this is what I like to listen to. But yeah, early ages definitely like dubstep, drum and bass. Deep house, things like that. Yeah.
Can you remember that the first kind of artist or track or album that really kind of converted you?
And Spanish breakbeat as well. I forgot about that. Skrillex, Dusky.
Yep.
Colombo from Spain, which you guys might not know. Those are the ones that jump into me. But yeah, those are the guys that definitely like. They were the people that got me into electronic music, 100%.
And what about you, Freya?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story being here with Patrick, who's from Cologne, because actually the first time I really listened to house music was when I went to Cologne, like 10 years ago. It's like a full circle thing. So
There's a chance that I played on the party.
It could have been Patrick DJing, which would be. I can't even remember which club I was in, so we're never going to track it down. But it's possible. Yeah, so I went to Cologne and I was like partying at these clubs and I was listening to house music and yeah, it just like blew me away, like the sound and the clubs there. And then this was at the time when sort of Nicholas Jar and David August were blowing up, and I would say like Nicholas Jar was definitely like a huge inspiration to me at the start. He's like one of the most creative producers, a really interesting guy. I used to love Bonobo as well. The Bonobo 2012 Boiler Room set is like such a classic. So I've listened to this like over 100 times. So this was like my gateway into electronic music, for sure.
And Nicholas Jar, he had a great double album out last year, I think.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
He's the gift that keeps on giving.
It's crazy. Patrick?
Yeah, I remember at the same time, like around this time, Dark Side was playing in Cologne, I think, in like the Philharmonics, where the orchestra is playing normally. That was, yeah, like there is like the Philharmonie, which is like a theater for orchestras and music. Yeah, so for me also like the hybrids, like the XX, for example, like things that this band music, but having like loads of synths and stuff that like pull me into electronics. Of course, also the Cologne scene when I was going out, and I was like 17 and stuff, and or 18 because I should be 18 when I go to the club
For legal reasons.
We've all been there.
Yeah, and but yeah, of course, like there's like lots of electronic music in my hometown, and lots of like poppy techno music, and that definitely like had an influence on me. We have like one live act that still exists also from that time called Coma, COMA. Great guys, they still do music, and they're an awesome live act, also like a hybrid between the electronic and the pop world. Yeah, things like this, definitely, yeah.
Well, and for those, if you don't know, Patrick, as well as being a very talented electronic music producer, but he's also the lead singer and guitarist in like a psych pop band called Aqua, ACUA. Incredible. We went to see them, myself and my friend over there, went to see them on the first gig of your British tour, wasn't it? I can't remember, in November or something,
yeah,
in London. Which came first, the electronic music or the kind of
the
indie?
The electronic music came first, but the heart of guitar music was there, but I wasn't able to like express stuff in this world. And then the more I did, the more I learned, the more I said, okay, just fuck it, and now let's go to the drum set and like just try out. And then I worked myself into this like somehow, and now I just like both worlds, of course, yeah.
But you definitely hear those kind of indie and punk sensibilities in your electronic music, especially kind of your vocals, I think.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm pretending to like sing in my stuff, but also Caroline, who's also here tonight, is also singing sometimes. And yeah.
Channan.
About electronic music, right? So again, like anyone who grown up in the 2000s, you hear electronic music all the time, you know. I'm thinking like, let's say, you know, the late and great Kanye West, for example, even like Stronger was one of the first songs I heard, and I didn't know about Daft Punk, you know, but that showed me something about Daft Punk, and then you hear shades of electronic music so much, and it was like that for me. I never disliked any kind of music really, but then I used to go to anything really, apart from the techno, because techno was somehow inaccessible. I think techno was really underground, so you couldn't find it even. But I used to go to, you know, dubstep shows and future bass, they call it. Like,
yeah, I think I saw you there once in the dubstep.
Yeah. So this, you know, there's like all kinds of things. I saw Tiesto once, you know, and it's techno, it's house, but it's not quite what we do now. But the thing where I went underground was I was in New York, and my friend took me to a Solomon show, And I don't know, over there it was a Solomon 8-hour set in a warehouse, and it was a small warehouse. It's not where you'll be able to see Solomon at ever again, probably. It was that kind of thing. But it was just like very contained, very steady, and something about it just felt like, oh my God, this is like me in the chapel of some kind, you know? It felt like these beats somehow felt sacred, and it wasn't the drugs, it wasn't anything, you know, those things are all a given, but it was more just, I don't know, something about the energy, the sound, the feeling that I got in my chest was different than anything I'd ever had, you know. We've all done drugs before and this, that, so you skip that, and it was just like, okay, there's something important going on here, even if it's not important to anyone else. Somehow it suddenly became important to me, you know. It was like the groove, it was really like an under the belly thing. It's like low mid for producers, I don't know, something between 100 and 200 hertz, you know. It's like that the sub is the sub, but it's that tom that exists in the 100 hertz, you know what I mean? Like shout out Jess Spona and DJ Ole and all those guys, because they do that really well. But that's what turned it for me. It was that seeing that Solomon 8 hours, I was like, I don't know. And since then I went home and I was producing like trap beats. Before that I was trying to rap myself over it. I still sing and rap and stuff, but somehow I found myself, I was like, no man, I want to make music that feels like what I felt, you know. And I hear a lot of producers saying this as well, is that the journey they embark on is like trying to replicate a feeling they felt. It's not necessarily a track they heard, but like a visceral feeling you feel, you know. And I think I've said this on Rick's podcast before even, but it was a very spiritually awakening somehow experience for me. And I'm pretty a-religious, you know, but that was the closest thing I feel like I've ever got to like feeling like I was part of some kind of thing that's larger than, you know, 3-dimension, you know.
And that, guys, is why I got Channan on this podcast, because I knew he'd give a really descriptive answer like that, and I love it. That's what I love from the podcast that we did together. So yeah,
Spiritual vibe.
But you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, totally.
No, I love
Yeah,
it.
totally.
The passion is there, totally. Right, we've got about 10 minutes or so. So I wanted to move on to like the relationship, if you think there's a relationship, because it's a very subjective kind of topic, between electronic music and art. Firstly, you know, as producers, do you consider making electronic music to be art? And you know, if you do, does that go as far as, you know, all kind of electronic music? You know, for example, I don't know, maybe the more cheesy kind of elements like EDM, which we mentioned before. And, you know, as producers, it's kind of like a second question, as producers, when you are making music, do you think of yourself as making, you know, a piece of art, or do you think more, I'm just trying to make a banger for the dance floor kind of thing? Freya?
Yeah, I think it's actually a very interesting question. The latter part of what you just said, of like when you're making music and whether you're thinking about it being art or being a banger, because you know, when you're DJing, there's a side of playing a DJ set where you see the music that you're playing, you're moved by it because you're a DJ, so you're trying to select the music that's moving you, but you do also kind of see it as like a tool. Like as you're building something, like little blocks in a chain, and everything kind of has its part. And you know, even as DJs, you have things that's like DJ tools, which is like a loop of something, percussion that's going to keep the crowd going, and you have tracks in your DJ set that are designed to create a specific atmosphere on the dance floor. So I come from a background of making music, same as, I guess, as Patrick and other people, but I've done a lot of classical music before. I've done a lot of musical composition, and that type of music making doesn't have a function to it in the same way. Whereas making electronic music is really interesting because it's supposed to be something that moves you. It's supposed to have this beauty to it, and well, it can be, or it depends where you're coming from with making the music. But it's always going to have a functionality to it as well. So it's just a really interesting juxtaposition, and it's kind of like two hats that you have to wear at the same time. And you know, when you sit down, I don't know if anyone's listened to John Hopkins' Music for Psychedelic Therapy, I think is the album. But it's like mostly beatless. It's like ambient music, you know, and you can't play that on a club dance floor. But it's still kind of a tool in some ways because it's kind of got like a functional purpose to it. So yeah, it's definitely really interesting, like the two hats that you wear, and I think any producer can relate to that. And it can also be a weird loop that you get stuck in where you're making something and you're like, which side am I in? Is this super artistic, but then it's not going to work on the dance floor, or vice versa? I think many producers can relate to that.
I think, yeah, I agree with you. I think in terms of DJing, I think that is more of an artistic side. For me personally, I don't know if you guys will agree, but when I jump in the studio, I just make music, but I don't feel like I'm an artist. I don't feel like I'm going there and I'm like, oh, I'm going to make like this creative thing or whatever. I just make music. Then what comes out at the end is like what maybe you can consider art. Yeah. Right?
Yeah,
but
of course.
It's not like I'm in there and I'm filled with these ideas or this like artistic sort of, you know, I don't know, like how like this, like what you said, like for me ambient music is artistic because there's like a story there. It's like there's like something interesting. It's like characteristic. I think club music is more like it's being used for something. It's like being used to like party, which I guess is also art. But there's just a bit more of a beauty for me in like ambient music, for example, that makes it perhaps a bit more like artistic. So yeah, does that answer the question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, and I think I could see that everything is breaking up a lot at the moment, which is nice because the borders are really, the boundaries get more far out and it's more allowed to play in the club and stuff. And so that's all like going in the right direction for this to embrace like the art in it. And on the other side, another thought that came to my mind was like the limitations of this like repetitive thing is on the other hand also a great fundament for like embracing the other stuff, right? So sometimes you need like these limitations to concentrate more on the rest, and then yeah, it just so techno music can also be like very free, I would say. It is, yeah, but it's just important to go in the studio and to say I have to do this or I have to do this, and my experience is also that it's just dumb if you like trying to do this all the time, because you might either end up you want to make a banger and then you end up like making a cheesy pop song and vice versa. So you always need to let the freedom in this process let go, and then it's going to be a good song, I guess.
Yeah. So, just I want to ask you, have you ever gone into the studio, whether you regret it or not? Like, have you gone in thinking, I want to make a song that this DJ is gonna play, or have you done that before?
Yes, and I end up like with a complete different sound. Of course, it would be a lie if not, but then like DJs from the complete other field will play it.
It's true.
So yeah, I mean, man, like the thing is, the couple of my tracks that have been played by like massive DJs, I never thought they would play them. You know, like I always like I'm in the studio thinking like, oh my god, like I'd imagine this guy playing this.
Can I just say Sasha and Digweed?
Sasha and
play one of your tracks,
Sasha and Digweed have played my track with Works of Intent, and Adriatic played my track. But I will say, in the studio when I was making it, I was like, well, like I could kind of see Adriatic playing this, you know? But I still, you can never ever, you never know. You never ever know. But about making art and that stuff, I don't know, man. I think I agree really with what Ethan said about it, which is like, you go in just kind of, you're just honestly doing your thing. I don't know if any of us really like, we're kind of just going in as like people who love the thing, and you just go and do the thing you like to do, and then later on, once the finished product is there, then you can maybe look back and say like, okay, that was a work of art, you know. And I do think that making people move on the floor is an art form, but so is bartending, so is like building, so is doing accounts. I think it's all like the kind of field of vision you look at it in, you know. I do think what we do is art. It's not the kind of art that you should get your head stuck up your ass about, like, I'm such an artist, you know. You make something, and it's a functional tool for sure, and I think that makes it difficult somehow, because you're trying to keep up with other functional tools, and I don't know. Point being, I think that we are artists, absolutely, but everyone's an artist if you see yourself that way. I really believe that.
I agree.
You know?
Yeah.
I have one other thing to add on this. It's just again about like the same thing of like functional tools versus making art. I read this quote, I think it was on Instagram or somewhere, and it was talking about the difference between artists and content creators, and it was talking about people who make wallpaper versus like painters. What's the difference between the two things? Because wallpaper can be very decorative and beautiful, but wallpaper is not really art. Really, even if you see some really nice wallpaper, it's probably not, you're not going to have the same reaction as you do in an art gallery. And I think that's something that's really interesting about like making electronic music and music for the dance floor, because it's not wallpaper, like it shouldn't be, but it is still occupying.
Wow, that's so true, though. Wow,
It's
you're getting to a really like good point there.
Yeah,
because
like-
most electronic music is occupying a bit of a wallpaper space.
As in, it's kind of like, yeah, you
You're
want
right.
to make electronic music as a producer, and you want to listen to electronic music that really touches your soul and moves you in a certain way. But then it is also having this practical purpose where if we look at other like visual arts, you have the visual arts where it's like wallpaper or it's advertising or whatever, versus the a Rothko painting that's just existing just to make you feel something. It's not to advertise something, it's not to do anything else. So it's just interesting because I think that as an electronic artist, that's something you have to confront often. It's really interesting.
Very true, but I just want to say that like the person you named, like Nicholas Jar, for example, makes it's undeniably art and artistry.
Not wallpaper, not wallpaper.
Not wallpaper, like undeniably. So that space exists, and like not everyone is him, of course, but I like that space does still exist. You know.
I just wanted to touch back on like what I said before about the ambient music and that, and I think it's like a good analogy for what you said. Like for me, ambient music is more like a painting. And then like, which it still can be electronic music, but I think music for the dance floor is maybe more like wallpaper, like it's functional. Yeah, exactly. So yeah. It's a good analogy for it. Well done.
And that's, I guess, the perfect way to end. I would like to go on, of course. I've got a million more questions, but we'll leave that for another time because the event is going to start very soon. Thank you to all my guests. Thank you, Redfreya. Thank you,
Thanks, Rick.
Ethan,
Thanks,
Reg.
Rick.
Thank you, Motip. Thank you, Channan. And I do want to say we've got Meltam over here, who was going to be part of the podcast. You obviously are a DJ later, but you've not been very well, and you can hardly speak. So we thought, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll give you a little bit of respite. But no, thank you very much. Guys, thank you, everybody, for coming. And I hope you're all going to stay for the event as well. If you haven't checked out my podcast, then follow me on Instagram at electric_communion. I've just done a fantastic one with the very talented artist Tamante, which came out on Monday. And I've got some really exciting guests on Track of the Weeks next week, a segment I've done. Samantha REj, Julian Cordnell, yes. So please do follow me and check out my previous podcast, of course, with all these four guys.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, they're all on your platform of choice, YouTube, SoundCloud, blah, blah, blah. But yes, thank you, guys. Thank you very much. And yeah, on with the night.
Thank you, Rick.
Lovely to be on this with you, man. I mean, I don't chill around. A very chill around. Very chill around.
That's what we
Wow, what a great conversation. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed hosting it. Thanks again to all those who took part, Redfreya, Motip White, REj, Channan Hanif, and a special thanks to Freya and Motip for giving me the opportunity not only to do the podcast, but to DJ at the first In Limbo event. Hopefully the first of many. Plans are already afoot for future In Limbo events here in the UK. Thanks also to Alfie and the Looking Glass Cocktail Club staff in Shoreditch for helping make it a really special night. And if you're ever around in Shoreditch and you're looking for a place to enjoy cocktails or just a drink in some very nice surroundings, then be sure to check out the Looking Glass. Also, if you're interested in following any of my guests, I've added the links to their socials in the notes to accompany this podcast. Don't forget also to follow me, if you're not already doing so, at electric_communion. I've got lots of exciting guests lined up for the future. I would also recommend you check out the full-length episodes I did with my 4 guests, if you've not again already done so, because they're extremely interesting insights into the lives of people working within the dance industry and offer up a lot of great advice, especially for anyone who is trying to make it in the industry themselves. And that's a wrap from me until next time. Take care as always, and in the meantime, keep on dancing.